Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight,
we have a problem with mental health illness in this community.
a conversation about mental health in the wake of the latest mass shooting at an elementary school in Texas.
I'm not here to fight anybody. I'm here because I'm asking justice for my son. Like, these criminals took all my son's dream away.
Meet two mothers who've lost their kids to gun violence and hear about the work they're doing to bring awareness.
We are not the solution. I think we are a part of the solution.
Concerns with an uptick in crime has led to private security in Lincoln Park. We have a live report. Chicagoans remember the beloved piping plover pair Monty and Rose. What lies ahead for the endangered bird species?
I fell in love with the sport.
This West Suburban program has introduced Latino teens to rugby for almost 2 decades. The story of the Temptations, plus a new production by Chicago's Tony Award-winning Court Theater. Theater critic Hedy Weiss reviews these and much more.
And Paris, as you mentioned, I'll be reporting live from Lincoln Park tonight for our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. This is one of Chicago's tonier communities, but yes, a concern in crime does have residents taking action on their own to try to combat it. The area also will serve up protein and produce at a farmer's market, and we are going to be serving up some homemade gourmet pizza. That's coming up, but first, back to you.
Making me hungry. Thanks, Amanda. And now to some of today's top stories. Public health officials at the CDC say Cook County is now in the high community risk level for COVID, and actually that will start tomorrow. Chicago Department of Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady spoke today about what that means in Chicago.
Wear a mask indoors in public. Yes, that means you, regardless of your vaccination status. As we move into high, put that mask on. This is different than the city of Chicago putting an indoor mask requirement or mandate in place. We will do that if our hospitals are getting threatened.
Arwady also said to consider avoiding higher risk activities like crowded indoor gatherings. This as the city is seeing a daily average of more than 1,000 cases, 28 hospitalizations, and a positivity rate of 6%. A 13-year-old boy was unarmed and had his arms raised to surrender when he was shot in the back by a Chicago police officer. That's according to a lawsuit filed today. The excessive force lawsuit says the incident illustrates the flawed implementation of the department's policy on pursuits. The bullet severely damaged part of the teenager's spine, possibly rendering him permanently paralyzed. The city's law department said in a statement that it hasn't yet been officially served with a complaint and it won't comment on pending litigation. A group of workers at Amazon's Gage Park warehouse walked off the job today. Amazonians United Chicagoland organized the walkout, saying Black and Latino workers have been harassed during bathroom breaks and that managers have made derogatory and racist comments. The workers are calling for the reinstatement of a warehouse associate who they say was fired last week, quote, based on blatant lies and with absolutely no evidence. The group says it plans to file lawsuits for wrongful termination and racial discrimination. And up next, a live report from Lincoln Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series, so please stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Native American settlements once banked Green Bay Trail, known today as Clark Street, a prominent street that runs, of course, through Lincoln Park. Chicago Tonight's Amanda Vinicky and producer Acacia Hernandez spent the day in the Northside community area, and it's the latest stop in our weekly Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. We go to Amanda right now. Amanda, looks like you're near the Lincoln Park Lagoon there.
Yes, Paris, and what a gorgeous night to have to be quote unquote stuck outside here, right? I'm near what used to be the boathouse and is now Cafe Brower, and also by the Nature Boardwalk. Part of Lincoln Park, now the park itself, Lincoln Park, is actually more than 1,200 acres, but there are a lot of smaller parks dotting the area as well, like Fire Station Park, that is off Armitage, and it is tended to by the Lincoln Central Association. Volunteers, so residents, but also groups like the Girl Scouts, have planted flowers, chives, and lettuce there, and anybody is welcome to go and get themselves a clipping of rainbow chard or kale to munch on. On Wednesday, the association is going to be hosting its first summer social at that park. This is a new initiative for the group's engagement committee, which is chaired by Ann Moore. She says with everyone having been holed up throughout the pandemic, this is a way to bring neighbors together.
We need to see each other. We need to say hi. We need to connect. It's good. It's good. It's good because, you know, bad things happen all over the city, including this neighborhood. And it's just important to connect.
Moore has lived in Lincoln Park for more than 30 years, and she says within that span, it has gotten livelier, more built up, and a new development is on the way. Lincoln Yards, a former industrial area along the North Branch corridor, has been cleaned up by developer Sterling Bay, which plans to make it a, quote, city within a city. Critics, however, fear that this project is going to cause even bigger traffic jams between Lincoln Park and Bucktown.
I sat in on some of those planning meetings, and I really urged that our communities be wed, and I'm not sure that that's what the plans presently call for, and I would hope so. We have two 19th century neighborhoods. They're walkable, they're successful, they've been successful for, you know, more than 100 years as communities, and I would hope that Lincoln Yards would be a community that unites Wicker Park and Lincoln Park physically, so we could walk to each other.
Now, as Moore hinted at, Lincoln Park does have a reputation as a successful, thriving community, and it is one of Chicago's most affluent. And Tony, nearly 40% of residents have an income over $150,000. Even so, violence a concern here too.
I think it's a misconception about Lincoln Park. There's carjackings, there's muggings. We're part of the city. Yes, there's money and there's funding for a community garden like this. But we're also very generous. When our alderman asked for donations to another, at the beginning of the pandemic for a ward far, far, far on the south side, people stepped up.
In early May, 23-year-old Dakota Early was shot in the 1300 block of Webster Avenue by a 19-year-old who has been charged with attempted murder and armed robbery. Early spent his birthday on Tuesday in the hospital, hopefully recovering. Parts of Lincoln Park have taken a proactive, albeit controversial, approach, hiring their own private security service to do neighborhood patrols. Now, this is not throughout all of Lincoln Park, rather in pockets where residents have gotten together to privately take up collections to pay companies like Downers Grove-based P4, which has officers doing rounds.
We do patrols here in Lincoln Park, and this is an ongoing program that's been going on for years. And conceptually, it's been there for decades. So the Neighborhood Watch concept has always been there. This is a professionalization of the Neighborhood Watch concept.
Just before I interviewed Ohm, a woman walked by that recognized him from a recent community meeting, and she did not want to go on camera, but she lives within one of the patrol zones and says that she is glad for it and believes that this does help to deter crime. There are a lot of community groups and associations in Lincoln Park, and coming up, we're going to be talking with a leader of the Sheffield Neighborhood Association, plus serving up slices of history. But for now, Paris, I'm going to toss it back to you.
All right, Amanda, thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing you again later in the show with those conversations. The massacre at a Uvalde, Texas elementary school is not only taking a toll on that small town, but on the nation at large. What is the impact of such a horrific event on the mental health of survivors, and how should adults address concerns of safety with their children in the wake of this, the Buffalo shooting, and the daily gun violence in and around Chicago? Joining us now to talk about mass shootings' traumatic impact and the state of mental health in our city and country are Alexa James, CEO of NAMI Chicago, that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Chicago chapter; Inger Burnett Ziegler, a licensed clinical psychologist and an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine; and Mashana Smith, a psychologist for the Center for Childhood Resilience at Lurie Children's Hospital, whose focus is on school-based mental health, adolescent trauma, and trauma-focused interventions. Welcome all of you here to Chicago tonight for this important discussion. Mashana Smith, I'll start with you, since you have dealt with kids that have experienced trauma in Chicago schools. So give us a sense of what the trauma is like for a child that has lived through what happened in Uvalde. It looks like we need to turn your mic on.
Sorry, yes.
There we go.
First, let me just say, wow. It is highly traumatic for any child, student who has lived through the trauma that they've experienced. You know, witnessing a trauma can be very, very traumatic for children. The experience is, needless to say, very shocking, completely unexpected, terrifying, the fear of death that it could have been experienced for the survivors, the guilt sometimes that even children can experience as a result of surviving the trauma. So those are just but a few things, but probably one of the, or some of the more prominent feelings that children are experiencing after a traumatic event, such as the one in Texas that has occurred, is feeling, you know, fearful, feeling incredibly anxious and afraid for what could be and what could happen to them in the future, not to mention the sadness and grief and loss from their classmates.
I imagine it'd be just a shocking level of PTSD, too, to witness something like that as a young child. Inger Burnett Ziegler, an American Psychological Association survey found that more than 3/4 of adults are fearful of a mass shooting incident possibly happening. First of all, how to deal with that fear, and second of all, how to address this with their children.
Absolutely. You know, when events such as mass shootings happen, such as this, it impacts not only the communities that are directly involved, but also the nation and the world at large. And Mashana mentioned some of the feelings that children are having, and adults are experiencing many of the same feelings of sadness, feelings of anger, feelings of fear and worry, and intense feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. You know, we keep encountering events like this time after time, again, and adults, parents, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do in order to keep their children safe. And so when thinking about how to cope with some of these feelings, I think it's important to first just acknowledge that the feelings are real. People are encountering very difficult situations, very traumatic events, and one after another. We can't lose sight of the context in which this unfortunate shooting has happened. We're witnessing violence day after day. Holding space for those feelings, leading into our support, making sure to talk when you feel like talking to people with whom you feel comfortable talking with, whether that be a friend or a family member or a mental health professional, and being in places in which you do feel safe. And I know that, you know, we have to acknowledge that those may be fewer places for some individuals, but identifying a place that you are safe. Maybe it's in your home, maybe it's in, you know, another community area, but leaning into that space and getting the sense of safety and security that you may be able to grab onto in this moment.
And there's that adage that everybody kind of has their own way of grieving. Alexa James, I want to bring up a study from the Department of Justice on just exactly who mass murderers are, and they said that person who committed public mass shootings in the U.S. over the last half century were commonly troubled by personal trauma. They nearly always were in a state of crisis at the time, and in most cases engaged in leaking their plans before opening fire. Although, are we conflating two different things here when we say well, mass shooters are mentally ill, or maybe there's just something else explaining their psychopathy?
Sure. I mean, yeah, we are conflating it. I think we are having the wrong conversation when we have the conversation around gun control and mental illness. Listen, there are a lot of people who are unwell. This does not help. These people are not committing terrible acts of violence every day. What we know from what my colleagues just explained is that there is a sense of powerlessness that is pervasive. And there are a lot of things that we cannot control. Natural disasters, for example. We can control this. And so we talk about mental health as the cause, but really what we need to be talking about is the outcome of this. We cannot continue to say we care about mental health when in fact we have control over making different decisions in which we would not be traumatizing communities, in which we would not have these long-term pervasive
You're talking
outcomes.
about decisions on gun laws.
Absolutely.
Right, and the governor of Texas was saying it's a mental health issue instead of a gun issue. This is a common refrain that you hear among Republicans. Mashana Smith, I want to talk about some of the work that you do. You focus on interventions in Chicago schools where kids have witnessed this kind of trauma. What are the interventions that are available?
There are a number of interventions. One in particular that we deliver and train clinicians to deliver with students is cognitive behavioral cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools. This is a trauma-focused intervention, a group intervention. We know that students who experience trauma can really benefit from being in group environments, knowing that they are not the only ones experiencing this, and receiving that intervention as a group. But a cognitive behavioral intervention, such as CBITS, really focuses on helping to identify what are those feelings that you're experiencing, helping to normalize many of the symptoms that children are experiencing after experiencing a traumatic event, but also doing everything from teaching relaxation strategies to help them cope with the stress that they're feeling and the anxiety that continues, helping them to kind of restructure and reconstruct their thinking if it can be reconstructed. To the point that's been made earlier, we don't want people to think, oh, I'm safe, or for our children to think that when indeed they are not. So, you know, the onus is on us to really help children better understand what the places in which they feel safe. But we do, you know, with the intervention, focus on helping children not to avoid the places that actually are safe, and that they can begin to revisit, that they may stop visiting after the experience of a traumatic event.
Alexa James, how widespread is the availability of mental health treatment in Chicago and Illinois for folks that have experienced this kind of trauma? For every child, for every adult that wants to find help, is there help available?
No. We are not even serving the bare minimum of people now that are help seeking. These are people who are saying, I need help. Listen, we continue to operate in a mental health system, in a crisis system, and this is exactly the same thing. This is a post-vention strategy. This is triage. You know, we are the emergency department for mental health. My colleagues here, the work that NAMI does, et cetera. And the fact that, and it is our privilege to do this, but we can't mitigate this experience at all, because we will not capture everybody. And there is no way that one-on-one sessions or even showing up in community can change the outcomes that this has that is long lasting. I think about parents who've experienced the loss of their children due to gun violence that are being re-traumatized by this experience. Can we talk about them? The law enforcement that responded to this. This is a significant issue that will change people's biology and their trauma response. We are creating mental health conditions.
And there's I'm sorry, there's just so much more we have to talk about this, but unfortunately we're out of time now. Our thanks to Alexa James, Ingrid Burnett-Ziegler, and Mashana Smith. We'll have to have you on again to talk more about this. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paris.
Thank you.
And now to Joanna Hernandez with more from our Turning Pain into Purpose series. Joanna.
Paris, this week we shared stories of 3 mothers navigating life after their children were killed by gun violence. As part of a Chicago Tonight special series, Turning Pain into Purpose, we are joined by 2 of the mothers to further discuss the work they're doing in the community. And they are Naisha Beeman. She's the mother of Jaya Beeman and the founder of the Jaya Beeman Foundation. And Catalina Andrade. She is the mother of Miguel Rios and part of the campaign Mothers and Families for Justice. Now, thank you both for joining us and sharing your stories. Naisha, I want to begin with you. Jaya was killed in February 2020, and since her passing, a 15-year-old has been charged, but there's still 2 others at large. Now, can you tell me how frustrating has it been for you, and do detectives have any leads to the 2 other suspects?
So the judicial system is very frustrating. So we have a 15-year-old caught. We have 2 more at large. But as a judicial system, I feel victimized every time I go to court. The judge, if I ask a question, she kicks me out. I feel like I didn't ask to be here. My daughter, we get victimized again.
And Catalina, I want to quickly go to you. It's been about 2 years in July since your son Miguel was killed, and you also have been working to get answers from detectives. You've mentioned that there were cameras where he was killed, but there's yet to any arrests made, excuse me. What more, can you tell me a little bit about where your case is at right now?
Oh, well, as of now, I would say it's like nothing. It's just very frustrating that, for me, there's cameras. My son was murdered in between 2 city cameras. And, for me, it doesn't make sense. How is it that, there's no evidence, like if my son was murdered and then he was robbed underneath a city camera. And it just doesn't make sense how nobody's been responsible for my son's death.
And Catalina, he was only 18 years old when he was killed, and Jaya was also 18. They had their whole life ahead of them. They were going to school. Both of them graduated. Is that right, Catalina? Miguel had just graduated.
Yeah, my son had just turned 18 on April 29th. He just became an adult. He just graduated from college. From UNC Prep, and he was going to go to college for mechanical engineering. It just doesn't make sense, like how they took everything from him in a second.
I can't even imagine or begin to understand how painful that is. And Aisha, I want to go to you. Jaya had also graduated, correct? And she was planning to also study nursing.
Yeah, so Jaya graduated in 2019. So she was in her first year of college at Malcolm X. She was studying to become a registered nurse.
And Aisha, I also want to talk about the change that you're trying to make in your community. You're trying to purchase the convenience store where she was killed. What is the vision there? What is your ultimate goal with purchasing that convenience store?
So to me, and what I think poverty, crime follows poverty. So I want to be able to give resources, career-ready programs, and I wanted that convenience store. Of course, it won't look like that, but I wanted that convenience store to be the hub for, basic nursing assistant, phlebotomy, dialysis tech, pharmacy tech, so we can get these adolescents and young adults trained and understanding something, have a purpose, because they walking around like nothing even matters. They're not caring about anything. Like they're just like urban terrorists. They become a judge, jury, and execution to something because they don't value anything. So we want to instill hope and to build confidence in the young adults and adolescents.
And you said your vision there is to, I believe you told me that you would love to paint the building pink. Is that correct?
I won't paint it pink, but I want it to be the colors of her foundation, because she was like vibrant. Those colors was chosen because she loved colors. She always, if you ever see her picture, she had a bunch of colors and sequins and glitter at all times.
You wanted to create hope in the community.
Yes.
Now I want to go play a clip from Maria Trujillo's interview. Now she lost 2 sons last year. Let's take a listen.
Siempre ha sido lo mismo, lo que pasa que la gente se queda callada, pero siempre hay una noticia de violencia, y antes eran, yo no sé, pero como que tenían un objetivo. Ahorita no hay un objetivo. Ahorita la bala no trae un nombre.
And Catalina, you actually know Maria. You guys are both part of the same campaign, Mothers and Families for Justice. Now, what do you think about what she said about the code of silence of the community not saying anything?
I think I totally agree with her, because in my case, I have gone to that community where my son was murdered. And I have gone there and I have put flyers up, and then I come back the next day and like all my flyers with the Crime Stopper reward removed. So it's like, it just doesn't make sense how, you know, there's so much and people in the community might know something and they just decide not to say like something, you know, something little for them could be a lot, you know, to solve our children's case. And it's just very frustrating for me and very sad because, you know, it hurts me that I go and put my flyers hoping somebody in that neighborhood saw something and they just remove everything from me.
And now we only have time for one last question. Aisha, I want to go to you. How do you want people to remember Jaya?
I want you to remember Jaya's happy, cheerful, dancing machine. She walked around with a Bluetooth speaker, always playing music, uplifting person, and she didn't deserve her fate.
And how about you, Catalina, for Miguel?
Oh, got it. I want people to know the good kids they took from me. My son was such a smart kid. He always, whatever he put his mind into, he would do it, and he always would tell me, "Mom, I'm gonna make you proud," and he was making it. It's just very sad, like I said, that just somebody decides to take everything from our kids in a second and destroy our lives, take their lives for no reason.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories. You guys are both clearly resilient women. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And for more on gun violence impact on families and possible solutions, check out WTTW's First Hand series. That's at WTTW.com/firsthand. There's more Chicago Tonight just ahead, so stay with us.
Thousands of Puerto Ricans are taking to the streets to protest massive blackouts.
Over the years, Mexican culture, from food to music, has become woven into the city's tapestry.
Medical professionals share the latest recommendations on COVID-19 booster shots.
DACA recipients have been facing longer delays than normal in their status renewal.
Little Village is one of my favorite neighborhoods. This neighborhood comes together to celebrate such an important day in our culture.
Winston Churchill once called the sport of rugby a hooligan's game played by gentlemen, and indeed it's a rugby tradition that every rough and ready match ends with the very genteel sharing of a meal between opposing teams. At the West Suburban Morton High Schools, the full-contact team sport born in England has become an unlikely favorite among their largely Latino student body. Producer Erica Gunderson kicks off the story.
I came out here and tried out with a couple friends, and I fell in love with the sport.
The free aspect of it really just, like, you know, football you have, not everybody gets the ball, and rugby, everybody has a chance with the ball.
It's so fun when you see like the girl like running up to you and you know like her footing is off or something is just like off about it. You can just do a little swipe and then they just fall right there.
It gives me opportunities that I wouldn't get in other sports, like the opportunity to get a ball, be able to run with it, and express myself.
Rugby is a famously rough and tumble sport. No pads, no helmets, just teams of 15 battling each other for the ball. But for the Morton Mustang rugby teams, it's all about love.
I love how we tackle because it's fun to tackle. Like me, when I tackle, I imagine big teddy bears on the field, and I'm like, this is fun.
I just love the discipline every player has, and I just love the hospitality that the team and all the players gave me despite not knowing how to play.
It's about the team effort. It's also about building like certain specific friendships and relationships with not only the coaches but with the teammates as well.
And then you bring it onto the field, and you know you can connect, like you know what to do with each other just by a look.
Head coach Aaron Sweeney says it's all part of the game plan for the Mustang rugby teams in West Suburban Berwyn and Cicero.
It's one of the cool things about rugby is it looks like guys beating the heck out of each other, girls beating the heck out of each other too. And then after the game is over, you don't just shake hands, you sit down, you actually eat a meal together. And I get a kick out of kids from completely different walks of life hanging out after a rugby match.
Building a successful rugby program in the deeply Latino Morton high schools was a long shot. Though it has made inroads in some Latin American countries, the British-born sport is still most popular in New Zealand, Australia, and Europe. But in 2003, Sweeney, who played rugby at the University of Illinois, and two fellow teachers decided to give it a try.
We just scheduled one game that first year just to see if we could do a rugby team here at Morton. We found out we could. And based on the strength of that, it got bigger and bigger every year. And over time, had some success on the field, won 3 state championships, 6 JV state championships. We're very proud of that. But I guess what we're more proud of is we got 45 guys out trying to use rugby as a vehicle to be better people, and we can feel very proud of that.
In 2018, Mustang player turned coach Ricardo Santillan decided to pass the ball to Morton girls, too.
You're the team to beat. Got it?
Yes.
So act like it. Since I was playing in 2010 to 2011, we always had managers that wanted to play rugby and didn't get the opportunity to. But we had over 300 girls come out to the first tryout, so we want to keep growing that and just build equity.
Over the past 2 years, the pandemic dealt some blows to both teams. Sweeney had put together what he says was one of the best Morton boys teams ever in 2020.
And then the season got cut. And then COVID hit the Cicero-Berwyn area particularly hard. And a year later, we had 19 kids in the whole program. It was like we were starting over.
But Sweeney says interest rebounded with a return to in-person school. And he's counting on this year's seniors to keep sharing the rugby love.
All right, get in here. When we were remote learning, you don't have that rugby kid next to another kid saying, hey, this is really fun, you should check it out. And that's why I'm so glad that we're back in person. We got our kids spreading the gospel of rugby. 1, 2, 3, 4!
I love it now.
I love playing rugby.
And it's like the best feeling, yeah.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Erica Gunderson.
And an update, the Morton girls team has advanced to the state championship. They'll be playing in Plainfield Central for the title this weekend. Good luck to them. And still to come on Chicago Tonight, after returning to the city for 3 years, Chicagoans won't get to see Monty and Rose this year. We explain why and what's next for the endangered species. Sustainable farmers set up shop at a local farmers market, from Chicago urban farmers to out-of-state ones. That and more from Lincoln Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. And theater critic Hedy Weiss reviews a new production of an August Wilson play from Chicago's Tony Award-winning Court Theater. But first, some more of today's top stories. Governor J.B. Pritzker announced that all recipients of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program can receive $200 in utility assistance payments. This as some members of the Illinois House held a hearing on addressing utility price increases with energy provider Ameren. Here's one voice heard in the public testimony period on how increased costs might affect Illinoisans.
And being that virtually every person in the finalization of policy set forth by Ameren is not burdened by the injustices faced by economic oppression or the continuation of environmental racism, makes it extremely difficult for them to empathize with a single Black mother whose electric bill will increase over $100, and then she has to decide between buying food for her child or keeping her heat and air on to survive Illinois' extreme summer and winter.
And the deadline to apply for the state's utility assistance is the end of the month. City's expanding its 911 alternative response pilot program into Southwest Side communities. This program, known as Crisis Assistance Response and Engagement, aims to reshape the way the city responds to mental health crises by having paramedics and mental health professionals respond to some 911 calls. It's already been implemented in areas on the north and south side and will soon be available for residents in Chicago Lawn, Gage Park, West Elsdon, and West Lawn. According to the city, these teams have responded to more than 200 emergency calls since last September. After having its dealer's license suspended in Illinois earlier this month, car retailer Carvana is back in business, but with significant restrictions. A stay has been put on the company's temporary suspension, allowing the company to only sell vehicles but not issue temporary registration permits or license plates while the stay order is in place. The Village of Skokie says the company's controversial plan to construct a 14-story car vending tower in that suburb remains on hold. The tower has been criticized by neighbors and environmentalists for a possible increase in traffic and concerns the glass tower could cause bird collisions from the nearby forest preserve. Piping plover lovebirds Monty and Rose have been returning to Chicago's Montrose Beach for 3 springs and summers, but sadly, That won't be the case this year. The tale may have come to an abrupt end, but their Cinderella story continues to inspire hope. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. Patty, first of all, remind everybody what happened to these beloved plovers of Monty and Rose.
Yeah, we're so used to them flying back north to Chicago every spring, but Rose actually never arrived and has not been seen by anyone in months, so we're sort of fearing the worst for her. Monty did arrive back in April, right on cue, but unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, he was seen stumbling around, gasping for air, and died. We're still not quite sure why.
And it might have been just from a broken heart, Patty, as you were telling me earlier. And so there was a recent memorial held in their honor, and you attended that. How was the memorial?
It was just a really beautiful celebration. We should all be so lucky to be so loved and celebrated the end of our lives. It was a real sense of joy amongst the people who were kind of celebrating the fact that Monty and Rose were ever even here in the first place, which seems so improbable. We hadn't had piping plovers nest in Chicago since the 1950s. You know, they're a threatened species. So it was really a celebration of the community that the volunteers formed, who served as guardians for them while they were here, and just how much joy they brought to people's lives.
Now, there is a bittersweet ending here, because as I understand, there is another generation, the offspring of Monty and Rose. They have been spotted, correct?
Yes, one of their offspring last year actually nested in Ohio, and this year, one of Monty and Rose's 2021 chicks, Imani, showed up. He's back at Montrose Beach right now, and if a lady plover shows up, you know, there's still hope. So we'll see.
All right, always hope there. Thanks, Patty. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website, where you can learn more about the story of Monty and Rose and the history of piping plovers on Chicago's beaches. It's all at WTTW.com/news. And now we go back to Amanda Vinicky, who spent the day in Lincoln Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series to learn more about the Northside community. She joins us now with a voice from that area. Amanda.
Yes, Paris, I'm joined by Brian Comer. He is president of the Sheffield Neighborhood Association. Thanks so much for joining us, Brian. Now, you are born, bred, not just Chicago, but Lincoln Park.
Absolutely. I'm a son of Sheffield, and it's just an honor to serve as president of the Sheffield Neighborhood Association. It's always been my home.
And yeah, we were talking about Lincoln Park changing, Lincoln Yards set to come into the area. What are your thoughts? Is it welcomed?
We want development. We want smart development. And so obviously something was going to have to happen once Finkel and Sons mentioned that they wanted to move out. So we look at it as an opportunity to work with the owner, Sterling Bay, to make sure that the development works for not only the new residents, but also the existing neighborhood and this part of the city, because it's not just Lincoln Park that's affected by it. So we're in constant communication with them, talking about their different parcels and development ideas.
And what has the reception been like on the part of the developer? Do you hear that you're not just having meetings, but that they're productive ones?
They are. They are. In fact, we've been very pleased with a couple of the parcels have severely changed from their initial design to designs that took into account the comments that neighborhood associations like Sheffield Neighborhood Association.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, a curb cutout for a possible food establishment that they're putting in, we thought could cause, you know, more of a traffic backup than we would like to see. So they went back and adjusted the entire design of the entire plot to make sure that you could use smaller arterial streets to service the needs of those, you know, upcoming customers.
As I don't know anybody who's a fan of traffic, but I am on board with less traffic.
Yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
And a concern presumably for Sterling Bay as well, if they want the area to be successful.
Right, and traffic on the near north side has always been a concern, but you are going to be putting tens of thousands of new residents and, you know, employees into the neighborhood, and the only thing the city said at the start of this was that they're not going to widen the streets. So that presents, a problem that you have to solve. And so our focus as a neighborhood association is to continually make sure that everyone in the discussion about Lincoln Yards is aware of that focus.
Now, another problem top of mind for many residents, or at least fears, whether it's perception, reality, is that of crime. And it was in the Sheffield area where Dakota Early was shot and severely injured in early May. What can you share with us about what you know about that incident and how the community has reacted to it?
Well, one, that's the most heinous crime I've ever heard of or experienced in our neighborhood in the 5 decades that I've been a part of Sheffield and in Lincoln Park. Our hearts are still with Dakota and his mom. The one bright spot in it, if you can call it a bright spot, is that we had neighbors that ran out there as soon as they could to be with him, to call 911, to hold his hand, to make sure that he knew that he wasn't alone. And I'm just happy he's still alive, and we just keep praying for him every day. But crime is a big issue in our neighborhood, just like every other neighborhood in this city. But over the last 6 to 9 months, it's become increasingly more violent. And so our association, like other associations, work closely with our local police district. We have great representatives and officers in the 18th, and our CAPS program is strong. So, we had over 130 people at a meeting 4 days later for a beat meeting that was already on schedule to talk about safety and because of the incident with Dakota.
People certainly stepping up and concerned. Thank you so much for joining us once again. That is Brian Comer, president of the Sheffield Neighborhood Association. Paris, we'll see you soon, but for now, back to you.
Thanks, Amanda, and we do look forward to seeing you again later in the show. And up next, we head to the theater for a review of some shows and productions coming to a stage near you. But first, a look at the weather. From touring shows to local productions, there's lots happening on local stages, as always. And joining us with her recommendations is arts critic Hedy Weiss. Hedy, always great to see you. Let's start with a new production of Spring Awakening at the Porchlight Theater. Spring Awakening won the Tony for Best Musical in 2007. So tell us about this new staging at the Porchlight.
Well, Porchlight, everything they touch really turns to magic. But this show, especially now with all the controversy about Roe v. Wade, is such an eye-opener that when I walked away from it, all I said was, I think every judge and every politician who's trying to upturn the Roe v. Wade should just be forced to see this show.
Well, give us a synopsis. Tell us why that is.
Well, it was written actually in 1891 in a very conservative German society where, the real title of the play should be probably Sexual Awakening, not Spring Awakening, but, and they, it's about kids, teenagers in a German town whose parents really don't want to talk to them, frankly, about sex. And they're coming of age and they're interested, and so there's a kind of a disaster, and I don't want to give away part of it, but the music is a very modern score, and some of the dialogue is a little bit updated, and the young cast is absolutely fabulous.
You mentioned the music. It's written by Duncan Sheik, who's kind of like a rock or a singer-songwriter type of guy. What is the music like?
Well, there is a very strong rock beat at certain parts, but there's also a real lyricism to it. It's a wonderful score, and the singers have fabulous voices. So it's almost like, I don't know, hard rock, but opera, and it's really very, very. Just the whole thing is very moving and brilliantly done, and it's only going to be at Porchlight until June 2nd. So I really encourage people to go see it. It's not for young, very young.
So they just have this weekend here to go do it. All right, next play is Two Trains Running by August Wilson. This is at the Court Theater, which just won a Tony Award for Best Regional Theater. This is an August Wilson play. So how does this fit into the August Wilson Ove, Two Trains Running?
Well, this is, it's called the Century Cycle. And this is the 1960s, at the end of the 1960s. And he dealt with each decade. And of course, the 1960s were an incredibly tumultuous time with everything going on and civil rights. And August Wilson's whole idea was to capture something about Black life. And it's set in Pittsburgh, which was his hometown. And it's an area, it's set in a diner that's about to be taken by the city because they say renewal, but it might also be, just changing the neighborhood. And the owner of the diner wants to get what he thinks is the fair price for the property. And hanging out at the diner is a whole range of people. There's the older guy who's kind of mellow and is very spiritual, and then there's a young guy who uses the payphone to do the numbers game. And then there's kind of a young guy who just got out of jail. And then there's only one, among the 7 characters, there's only one woman, and she's the waitress, and she's not treated very well by her boss, and she has her issues. But there are a lot of veteran Black actors in this production, and it's so great to see them back on the stage again.
I'm sure the dialogue is tremendous, as in all August Wilson plays.
Yes.
All right, the next one is all about the music as opposed to the dialogue. Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. This one is obviously touring. It's here at the Cadillac Palace. I went and saw it a couple days ago. Do they do the Temps justice? I mean, I know my answer to it, but what's your answer?
Oh, my feeling is that I never thought anybody could replicate that group. I mean, the dance moves, the music, of course, is fabulous, but the dance moves are absolutely amazing, and the way they synchronize and they split and they're just, it's wonderfully choreographed by Sergio Trujillo, who actually won a Tony when the original production was done in, I think, 2018. And I think they not only do justice, I think they're kind of amazing. They've kind of, they just kind of figured out who all of these characters are. And that's the other thing about this musical. It really does explain the many different temperaments of the original members of the group. And then over time, there were 10 or 14 changes, and how they fit in and how their different personalities meshed or didn't mesh.
And I have to agree with you. I mean, amazing performances, and I learned so much about the Temptations that I didn't know. All right, finally, a preview of something at the Joffrey Ballet. You don't have a review yet, but tell us about this much anticipated production of Don Quixote.
Well, I saw this, the original. It was created by Yuri Pasakov for the Joffrey, and it debuted by them in 2011. And then they were supposed to do it during the COVID years, but of course they couldn't. So now it's back. And the one thing about it, besides, the Joffrey is just fabulous company, but they're not just technical dancers, and they don't just concentrate on the ballet technique. That's just a given. They're really wonderful actors, and this ballet allows them to sort of show a lot of that talent. And it's comical at times, and it's fantastical, and it's very original. And they have, they're at the Lyric Opera building now, and so they have also lyric opera musicians and their usual great conductor, Scott Speck. And so the whole production, which also has special effects and puppets, I really think it's a great family show.
So it's a whole multimedia affair here. We'll look forward to that. And our thanks, as always, to Hedy Weiss. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paris.
And we're back with more in just a moment, but first, a look at some events happening this Memorial Day weekend. And now we check back in with Amanda, who has spent the day in Lincoln Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series to learn more about the Northside community. Warning, this next segment may make you hungry to visit. Oh boy, I have not eaten dinner yet, so this is going to be dangerous for me. Amanda.
All right, Paris, you got a minute to wait for that. Lincoln Park is home to a lot of well-known places. You know, you got DePaul University, also a lot of tourist attractions, the zoo, Peggy Note Park Nature Museum, the Conservatory, North Pond, but also the Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder Company. Now, in 1929, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre took place across the street, and upstairs of what is now the pizza place was at the time supposedly a seedy hotel, and on the upstairs, that's where Al Capone's crew used it as a lookout. So an unsavory group of folks then, but the opposite now. Since 1971, Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder has served up homemade comfort food in the form of carbs and cheese.
This is the pizza pot pie. So what we do here, we bake our pizzas just like this. So it's baked in a ceramic bowl. We fill it with the layers of cheese, and then we add our house-made sauce. We have a meat sauce or a vegetarian sauce, both which we cook down for about 9 hours from start to finish. And what we do is, once they come out, we just flip it and pop that right out, and boom. That is the pizza pot pie.
So, by the way, 1972, which means that it has been 50 years of homemade crust, sauce, and gooey Wisconsin brick cheese. GM Kathy Galanis says in a town big on deep dish and tavern-style pizza, this place has carved out its own, now nostalgic, niche.
You know, with every whim and craze, we didn't change. We always tried to stay the same, and I think people ultimately really like the fact that they can come in here, and if they came in like 10 years ago and they come in tomorrow, everything's the same, the decor is the same, the food is the same, even some of the faces are the same, because there's a lot of people who've worked here for, you know, as 20, 30 years.
She herself has worked there for 40 years. Now, if you're not a fan of pizza, and I cannot fathom personally that to be the case, there are other options such as homemade meatballs, sausage, salad with dressing that is made in-house as well. Now, speaking of salad, Lincoln Park is host also to the Green City Market. That's every Wednesday and Saturday morning.
So we have microgreens, and today we're selling lilies as well. We have CBD, oftentimes gourmet mushrooms, a plethora of eggs, chicken, and duck eggs we usually have as well, and people are oftentimes interested in the duck eggs. That's something new for a lot of folks.
Tiffany Michinor herself is fairly new to working at the market. Until just a couple of weeks ago, she was just a fan.
This is such a beautiful neighborhood, and I just love the greenery and the beach, and so I would see this market all the time on Wednesdays and Saturdays and just like marvel at the amount of people who would come out here and just seeing all the beautiful produce. And so I looked it up, like, what is this Green City Market all about, and wanted to be a part of it. And Jacobson's Family Farm was hiring, so here I am.
Green City Market is a not-for-profit, and those who use SNAP can really stretch their benefits by shopping there. Spend $25 of SNAP benefits, and the market matches it twice over. So shoppers will be able to buy $75 worth of mostly local goods. The market's director says that the vendors have to go through a rigorous application process, and they all have to be certified as sustainable or, in cases, organic. And because they are local, she says that they are not suffering from many of the greater supply chain issues that are impacting the rest of the economy. Really, she says, the bigger battle that vendors are facing is one up against Mother Nature.
A rainy day or extreme heat, right? So that's more of what they're battling. In terms of some of our other products that they have, things like glass jars, right? We've had some of our vendors who sell honey share with us that something as simple as a glass jar to bottle that honey has been an issue, right? So you may see some varying things on the tables because of those types of supply chain issues. But in terms of the produce and the protein that you're going to find, they're growing it right here. So that supply chain is much shorter, right? It's coming right from the farm, right to the market, right to your plate.
Lincoln Park is the main host for the Green City Market, but Green City Market also has a farmer's market on Saturday mornings in the West Loop. So there, Paris, time for dinner almost. Back to you.
My tummy's gurgling. By the way, Amanda, reserve one of those swan pedal boats out there for you and me, and I'll come join you.
Sounds like a plan. I'm in.
All right, we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night, live at 7 for the Weekend Review. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.
Next time on the Great Chicago Quiz Show. How's it going? Well, I hope you don't get hit by the happy bus.
Yes, I will not.
Hope I don't lead you down the wrong path.
Scott, I am amazed.
I do what I can, Jeffrey.
In a utopian society, it will be cheeseburgers everywhere.
That will be my choice.
Thursday at 8 on WTTW.